Brand new data just dropped from Cox Automotive showing that the average prices for electric vehicles is now nearly the same as the prices for gas cars, with the average price of gas cars at $48,760 and EVs only $2,000 more. The trend is very, very clear. It's over for the gas cars. What will happen when the prices fall even more for EVs over the next few years? Plus, as a bonus, we also have a new data on the number of electric vehicles being introduced in the next 2 years. We've got Hans Nelson joining us. He's going to help us review these numbers. Welcome, Hans.
Thanks for having me, Herbert.
So let's take a look at this data from Cox Automotive, which is pretty reputable. They dropped a whole PDF with lots of graphs and charts. We pulled out two that we thought were interesting for this conversation. The most important one is that this one, EV prices are near parity with ICE, internal combustion engines. So it looks like that the average transaction price for an electric vehicle right now for all electric vehicles is $50,798. The ICE gas cars is $48,759. So that's basically a $2,000 difference now. We're basically at price parity. And I bet you this does not include the incentives for the IRA. Tesla's only $50,000 at this point. So that's, which is just, it's basically the same, right? I mean, we're talking about $700 difference here. And so let's take a look at, it's actually cheaper, sorry. Teslas are cheaper than average electric vehicles. And so for them, they're even closer, Tesla's even closer to ICE cars. Let's take a look at this data. So you can see how the trend has been since January of 2019. In these 4 years, the blue is the ICE cars going up, and then the red is Tesla falling dramatically here. And then everybody else had to follow, of course, as much as they could. The electric vehicles had to follow what Tesla did when they cut prices. What's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so there's a couple of really important things to draw out of this graph overall. So one of them is, yes, the average transaction price on ICE vehicles is increasing over time. And that is just something that we have observed for, a number of years now, that if you understand Wright's law, you understand that it requires a cumulative doubling of production in order to continue to reduce prices. And once you have a global fleet of billions of vehicles, it's very, very hard to get another cumulative doubling. And so while the core technology could technically get cheaper in price, what regulators are requiring is that auto manufacturers include more things in order to meet safety and emission standards. And so that regulation actually results in the prices of the vehicles going up over time instead of being able to maintain flat or decrease. And this is something that all ICE vehicles really face, is that they don't have the ability over the next 10 years to get cheaper than they are currently. They're going to get more expensive, not less. And so you see, obviously, EVs, on the other hand, because it's a new technology, they actually can double the cumulative production that they've made to date on a relatively consistent basis. And as they continue to take share from ICE vehicles, that trend continues and accelerates, then they can drop those prices. And so one of the things that this chart pretty clearly says to me is that EVs are going to eat up almost the majority of overall new vehicle sales. And it's just a matter of time, because no one wants to spend more money for a gas car than they're going to spend on an EV, as long as that EV can do anything and everything that the gas car could do just as well as the gas car could do it. So they are continuing to build out those functions. The other thing that I really want to point out about that chart is that these prices are with vehicles that are highly biased towards being more expensive. So, a large portion of the total EV vehicles, almost all Teslas are, or not almost, all Teslas are sold in the luxury segments. So the Model 3, Model Y, S, X, Cybertruck, those are all luxury level vehicles. They don't have something that is in the mass market or compact segments yet at all. Even though the Model Y is the best-selling vehicle in the world, it's not the same as selling a Toyota Camry. And so for the average price of EVs to be this close to the average price of the ICE vehicles. And remember, this is only here in the United States market. This is not globally. And so, you don't see numbers from vehicles like BYD included in those average prices. So
Yeah.
this is just Tesla and a variety of, other like the Kias, the Ford F-150 Lightnings, the Mustang Mach-E's, those types of things. Um, as we see the cost of goods continue to decline on these EVs, we should actually see a pretty rapid move downward in that average price, which is going to be great for consumers and great for EV adoption overall. And the last point I did want to kind of um, notice in the graph was if you see the bump in price right around the yep in 2022, 21, that it affects the price of EVs a lot more than it affects the price of the ICE vehicles. That's going to be for two reasons. One of them is that, it's harder to move the larger number of vehicles. But the other is because the desirability relative to an ICE vehicle of an EV is higher. And so that's why when supply actually constricted, you saw a larger impact on EV prices than you did on ICE prices. And so it shows that people really do want this if they can have it. And it's just a matter of being able to produce the number of vehicles that people need at the prices that they can actually afford. Um, but yeah, if you control for the the desirability piece, that the win goes to EVs.
Very good points. Love it, Hans. So a couple points I want to make is that number one, this is the US, like you said. In China and in Europe, they're already, electric vehicles is already at parity, in fact, way below parity already. And then if you look at these graphs, I was trying to find it, couldn't find it. There's these projections to show that electric vehicle prices are going to continue to fall over the years. So we are already today at parity and in a couple of years. So a couple points on this graph here. So number one, it did say higher incentives. So it looks like it does include the incentives. And then the other thing to point out is that they're comparing the gas cars, so average price of gas cars, with the average price of electric vehicles, which is the yellow, which includes Tesla. And so this red
Yes.
line, which is Tesla, could be the one that's primarily driving down the price of the electric vehicles because of the, just 10 times more sales than anyone else out there. So if you look at Yaman, he said, graph should show Teslas versus non-Tesla EVs. We should actually see the non-Tesla EV prices. Tesla comprises most EV sales, so without that distinction, this graph is not very meaningful. And you said, good point. We should be able to estimate it based on their 7% total EV share figure. So we know that Tesla's just in 2023 is now 4.2% of sales in the US. So now you got 60%. That means non-Tesla EV average is 51,919. So when you look at it, 51,919, yeah. So the average price of a non-Tesla is even $1,000 more expensive than us.
Yep. Yeah, the one thing that I don't know about that is I don't know where they're putting. So one of the things that they broke out in their graphs was EVs were 7%, then they had hybrids at 9%, and then they had, ICE vehicles at the remaining 84%. And on that graph, it says EV and ICE plus. So I'm assuming that hybrids are included in the ICE plus thing. If they are not included, and if hybrids are actually put in the EV bucket, it does make that difference a little bit different. It ends up being just over, I think, 51,000. Um, but I would expect that those hybrids are included in the ICE Plus bucket. And yeah, that brings the
Nice.
non-Tesla EV price to like 52, just under 52.
Okay, good. So let's take a look at another data point that Cox Automotive just shared, which is very interesting. So they're saying that there's going to be an electric vehicle stampede in 2024 and 2025. We're going to see 70 new vehicles coming in the next 2 years. More models, more choice, more sales. And they show the different nameplates, and then Jeff Lutz had a very good point. He said, you should redo this list because many of these are going to be just compliance launches. They don't really expect to scale them. They're just going to launch them just to have a few on hand. What you want to see is how many will actually have a year one volume of 50,000. So yes, there's going to be many more, but many of them are just really not good. They're just going to be tiny little numbers.
Yep. I totally agree with Jeff there. I do think that it's good to see all these players trying to do something in the EV space. I think more choice, more options for the consumer is a positive thing. I think competition is a positive thing. And yeah, I think the market will be the one who decides, okay, what of those 70 plus new vehicles coming in the next 2 years actually deserve to be purchased, and are better. Really, I think just going back to the point about EV versus ICE, as long as those vehicles are better than their ICE counterparts, I think they'll sell. Better, more value for the same price. If Mercedes, for example, or GM, if they are selling an EV version and an ICE version next to each other, if the EV version is more expensive for the same price or the same price and less functionality, then it's not going to sell. And I think that's rightfully so. I don't think that consumers should pay more for less, and for us to expect that just because it's clean that they should make that decision. I think that we really do need to win the war on functionality, features, and price all at the same time in order to make this otherwise it's really not a sustainable transition. And yeah, so we need it to do that for that reason.
Yeah, but there's also laws that are being put in place. California, Canada, many of the European countries, China, where they're basically saying you need to phase out ICE vehicles. And it's happening sooner. Like you don't even have to wait till 2035. That's when 100% of sales need to be electric vehicles. Every single year they bump it up in percentage wise. So you add that to, like you said, at the end of the day, we already showed that it's already at price parity. And then there are so many advantages for electric vehicle. Just people need to know more about it. So good. Thank you so much, Hans. Follow him on his YouTube channel, Hans C. Nelson. Thank you, everybody. I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.